So welcome all of you to Jerusalem. It's such a pleasure to have you all here. And thank you so much to the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, which has in recent times become my intellectual home. They educate me and they make me better as a policymaker. So I'm very, very grateful. And I have to say that of everything that's been said in the last panel, I connect the most with Abdulaziz when he says that everything has to start from Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is normally seen as the scene of the challenge. But today, and this is what I've been saying in my role in Jerusalem, is that we're in fact the laboratory for the solution. Because if we can make it here, like New York, we can make it anywhere. And we have a diverse population here. We have a 40% Arab community, 5% Christian community. We have every single religion imaginable on top of the religions that we all know. And we have immigrants, Jewish immigrants from 60 different countries around the world. And so really we are the mosaic here by which that laboratory can find a solution to make the region and the world a better place. So I'm thrilled to be able to lead this panel and be able to discuss with all of you how you see things. So I'm very excited that we have some countries here even, let me not fall off. We have countries that we've had, that we've made already peace with, and we have some countries that we're looking forward to making peace with. But let's start with the countries that we already have diplomatic relationships. Let's start with my friends in Morocco. Hang on, is he in the room yet? No, okay. Oh, is there even room for him? No. Okay, so so we'll leave Rachid for when he comes and we'll try and make... So let's start with Ethiopia. Dr. Amare, you are head of a think tank, and you know, Israel not only has strong relations with Ethiopia, we have a very significant and loved Ethiopian community here in this country. So how do you see the Abraham Accords extending to your country and in general extending to the African continent? How do you see that paradigm playing itself out?
Thank you so much. I want to thank Mr. Dan and Ishel for organizing a conference. And then I'm really happy to be part of this original conference. And then back to your question, we'll see this accord as an important template in bringing some security cooperation in the region, and specifically in the Horn of Africa. We've been facing so many identity conflicts. And then at the same time, resource conflict, for example, earlier in the morning, and someone had raised the issue of GERD, and then I think it's probably Shell. So we've been in some sort of conflict with our neighbors that we share some resources, specifically the Nile waters. And then this is going to be a very significant template in trying to solve whatever type of regional conflict with regional solutions. So, and then there might be so many challenges in addressing.
What type of solutions are we looking at?
Yeah,
we spoke a lot about food security, water security. Do you see that triangulation including Ethiopia?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have so many challenges, like, for example, the resource conflicts, for example, right? So this is going to be just a template in bringing some adversaries that have been just looking as enemy states and bringing to the table and then to discuss about such a kind of issues rather than just looking to be some kind of an enemy state or an adversarial state forever, right? So with the help of this Abraham Accord, so we will be able enough to bring some solutions from Egypt, Ethiopia, and then Sudan, for example, to solve the issues of the GERD amicably, right? So rather than just looking each other as a conflict state. So it is going to be a very significant template in changing such a kind of a situation. And then the other most important issue that I want to raise in here is also we've been witnessing identity conflicts. And then identity conflicts are the simplest to start, but the hardest to solve, right? So if we are be able enough to bring the entire Arab world and then Israel together with the Abraham Accord, so this is going to be a very significant solution, whatever type of identity conflict that we are facing in Africa, right? So this template is a very significant template, and then we've been looking for it to solve these problems.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought about the identity conflict angle. Let's stay with Ethiopia for a second.
Yeah.
Dr. Belete, how do you see the triangulation with Africa, the Middle East, in the Abraham Accords? Do you see that Ethiopia could play a significant role here because of its relations with Israel?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thank you for...
I'm not the mayor yet, but thank you.
Looking the way you are articulating these things, I think you will be mayor soon. Yeah, and also Dr. Yechel, the Jerusalem Center, and I used to write to Atara as Mr. Atara, confusing whether she is a male or a female. But thank you.
It happens here a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, you never know what
It's a privilege being here. Abraham Accords or not, Ethiopia and Israel have enjoyed a very strong relationship for some time now. Whether it is a formal diplomatic relationship or not, it existed for some time. But the Abraham's Accord would add a new flavor because it brings actors from the Middle East and the Horn of Africa.
Are they
together.
not there already?
Sudan is, in a way, part of the Abraham Accords.
Yes.
Others will join soon, hopefully. But my point here is that it is not the formal relationship that matters. What brings Israel, Ethiopia, Middle East, and the Horn of Africa together is the silent partnership between the two countries, between Ethiopia and Israel. It has been going on. There were times when the formal diplomatic relationships were severed, for example, between the two countries immediately after the Yom Kippur War, 1972. So between 73 and 89, there was no relationship, formal relationship between Ethiopia and Israel. But still, the security architecture continued. And it is not only a bilateral relationship. Rather, it affected the entire region. So the joint Ethio-Israel affair has been instrumental in bringing peace in the Sudan, in South Sudan, and also in containing other belligerent powers in the northeastern part of the continent. So, I mean, some formal relationship is always important, but also we have to think beyond the formal. We have to think beyond the government relationship. We have to focus more on the silent partnership.
In what verticals do you see that happening? Food, water, the usual that we keep talking about? Or is there something beyond?
No, I mean, first we have to take care of the security, the political arrangement. Then also we can diversify it into agriculture, food security, etc. But these two countries have to navigate a very delicate region. I mean, yes, it is good to talk about food security, environment, etc. But this peace and security dilemma that we are facing, is more crucial. So, for Ethiopia and Israel, there is a role to play. They assume responsibility. And also, they have this capability. Because as far as I am concerned, Ethiopia and Israel are silent partners in both regions, the Middle East.
I'm not sure we're so silent, but I hear what you're saying.
I am trying to be more diplomatically correct.
Fair enough.
But there is this role to play.
Dr. Jacques Neriah, you've Colonel, Reserve Colonel, You were an advisor to Prime Minister Rabin. You've got so much experience also in the region, Africa especially. How do you perceive the Abraham Accords? Are you optimistic or hopeful? As Michal said, are you concerned about things that could take us back? How do you see this? What would Rabin have said if he were to open his eyes and see what's going on here?
He would be very much surprised by what's going on. Basically, I mean, I will talk as a former intelligence officer, and I'll say very bluntly and plainly that the Abraham Accords are facing headwinds. And the headwind comes from the east, from Iran. And Iran is very active in subversive activities all over the places where Israel has an interest, whether in the Gulf area, whether in Saudi Arabia, whether in Africa. We've seen Iran intervening, for instance, in Algeria because of the rapprochement between Morocco and Israel. So Iran entered the scene and is providing weapons and training and equipment to the Polisario just to create a problem between Morocco and Algeria. We've seen Iran going downwards to Nigeria, where they are trying to convert the local Muslims into Shia. They're pouring millions of dollars there, and we have the famous Sheikh Zakzaki, who's there in the 100 kilometers from Abuja, and parading hundreds and thousands of combatants that he has trained, and raising the flags and banners with Khomeini, with Hassan-Nahoum. This is what we are facing.
Are you concerned by the Iranian-Saudi rapprochement that saw a deal a couple of weeks ago brokered by the Chinese?
This is definitely a breaks in the process, and we have to overcome that.
How do we do that?
First, I mean, we have to go and, let's say, negotiate or talk with the Americans, and without the U.S., nothing will go on in this area. And the fact is that the Biden administration is just almost passive. It's only the last week when the American troops were attacked in Syria that the Biden administration is responding. So with the passive attitude of the United States, nothing will happen. The United States have to be an important element in promoting the accords. After all, they were the partners. They were the big brother that brought the partners around the table. And I think that we have to be very careful, and by saying that Saudi Arabia has also its own interests. It's not by chance that they have mended the fences right now with Iran, because of the lack of American support. I mean, the Saudis are very much, I would say, angry. They're angry at the Biden administration, and this is a reaction. And now they have introduced a new partner in the area who serves as a guarantor, the Chinese. Now, when the Americans retreat, then there's no vacuum in the area. Russia comes inside, and Iran comes inside, and also now China. So this is basically, I think that we have to understand that, as I said, the Abraham Accords are facing headwinds, but not only from Iran, but also from disruptive jihadist factions in the area, which most of the countries that are here suffer from that phenomenon. From the Sahel, from the beginning, from Mauritania to Mozambique, this is what's happening. And the fact that Libya has fallen and become a failed state, the whole south of Libya is in the hands of the jihadists.
Very concerning. Maybe Ambassador Yo from South Sudan, we have the Abraham Accords, part of the Abraham Accords are with Sudan, which opens up Africa, which cut the very toxic route of these jihadists. What's going on with South Sudan? What is your view? And can Christian Africa, because we've been talking about Muslims and Jews, but Christians are also children of Abraham. How can the Christian part of Africa also contribute to this expanding, hopefully, peace?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's working.
Thank you very much. And I thank particularly Yihun for inviting us, and for Dan and the team at GCPA. Let me put it this way. I think right from Camp David agreements and then to the agreement with Jordanian and the Oslo Accords up to the Abrahamic Accords, it seemed that Africa, 1 billion people almost, has been at the backdrop of all these things, more of an observer and sometimes active, because quite a number of our countries, they are members of Islamic Council, Conference, but also they are members of the Arab League. And because majority of the population of Africa are Muslim, Christian, and also that adhere to Judaism, some of them, you know, it means that much of what is happening in the Middle East, and particularly Arab-Israeli conflict, is being felt. And when you are an observer, a lot of things happen. Quite a number of African countries all along did have diplomatic relations with Israel, and also did have diplomatic relations with Palestine. So you have to grapple with issues of security, how to take care of Israelis, missions, and Palestinian missions. Number two, even at the level of the Middle East, as we understand it, we have concerns of security. At the Red Sea, you know it very well, a good number of African liberation movements were supported by Israel. So these dilemmas, which we call them, of Arab-Israeli conflict, created within Africa a feeling that what has been taking place from 1980s up to today between a Palestinian and the Israelis was in fact a process that is determined at one point in time in history that they will have to come to agreement. But of course, a joke in Africa would say, but these are brothers and cousins, why they have been fighting for that long and they are not coming to an end? The reason being that you cannot deal with complicated issue that is embedded with security in a very simple way. Why I'm saying this? We have witnessed this clearly. My colleague from Sudan, we were one country up to about 11 years ago. And there were three things which concern everybody. As a Sudanese, I was not allowed to travel to Israel. It's stamped in the passport. And immediately after we became independent, my country immediately recognized Israel. We didn't have issues with that. But this is because we're at a distance. So the first problem is distance. The second concern was we are a landlocked country as South Sudan. Red Sea is the main entry point for us, and then we have Kenya, the Indian Ocean. That's a concern. Now, how many countries in this? Maybe 24 countries. So they have the same concern like us. The third one, which is important, is the global and regional alignments after the last, you can say, 30, 40 years, were very interesting globally. Because the world has realized that you can have serious issues between countries, between people, part of the identity issue mentioned. But if the parties to the conflict do not concern with the surrounding, then they themselves become disadvantageous. So the Abrahamic Accords, in my view, the architects of these people, they have realized that if you deal with the Arab-Israeli conflict, and then there is something else called Palestinian-Israeli conflict, then you have to dichotomize it. This is a very good concept. And I think this is something we can develop here. So on the one hand, you are dealing with the issue of the Arab-Israeli conflict, and you say you open up, it's good, Jordan first, Egypt then, and then we go with the others. And those people, they have a moral obligation towards the Palestinian issue. But for the rest of us in Africa, it will be very easy for us to genuinely advise both sides, because now we are no longer feeling that if I talk like this, a Jordanian will feel like I am siding with this or that, or
so you're saying that essentially this opens up the ability to become an honest broker as a country that has supported or has kept relations with both sides.
You can become two. Actually, you're right. You cannot become a broker if the immediate countries with the interest, let's say United States of America, is very important. A country like Saudi Arabia is very important. And so you can go with the list, about 7 or 8 countries. If those countries that are beginning to develop the interest that this diversification of the peace process, let me put it this way, Africa as a bloc will have no problem, because some are Muslims, majority of them, they feel affiliated. Some are Christians, they feel affiliated. So now, for us, the door is open for everybody. This is how I look at it.
Well, that's
a long process.
It's an interesting and positive take. Moving on to your colleague of Sudan, that we were part of the Abraham Accords, Mohamed, Ahmed, Abuelgasim. What do you see today as a signatory country of the Abraham Accords are the main blocks to the development of the normalization, peace, mutual prosperity? Where do you see the challenges in that new relationship that we have with you?
Okay, first, thanks GCP, and thanks Yashel, Dan, Ephraim, to invite me again. This is the second visit to Tel Aviv or to Jerusalem within 1 month ago. Okay, first, for Abraham Accord, I think it is different for Sudan. Sudan is a different country, totally. Yeah. So, as one of my colleagues, you cannot make Emirate or American address and want Sudan to address it or another country to address it. It will not be.
You can't cut and paste.
You cannot.
And you're the first African country that we signed.
Sudan is different totally because there is a history.
Yeah.
Sudan fight against Israel in 1984. Yeah. No other country fight for Africa or Arab like this, even Arab, just Egypt or Jordan and Syria. Other Arab didn't make. So situation of Sudan is totally different. We have two problems in Sudan: Arabic culture and Islamic, political Islamic. So both of them, as my brother say, before in our passport you can find except Israel. So for them, after they have the country, immediately they finish it. But for Sudan, to change the culture, you need different mechanism. Different totally.
What mechanism?
It is not only economic or water or food, no. It is another different totally. We need it, especially for Sudan. I think for another African country, most of them, they didn't need Abraham Accord. Because already they have no main problem with Israel. The problem with Israel actually in this area, in this region, for some Islamic or some Arab countries. For other countries, they have no problem with Israel since, as I know. So for Abraham Accord, for Sudan, especially, I'm talking about Sudan, we need to activate it. We signed in January, I think, of February 2021.
Yeah.
But until now, nothing happened. Nothing. Okay. Because, as I said from the beginning, you use different way. You use a scale of Emirate or Bahrain or Morocco, and you want to do it in Sudan. Which will not happen.
What should we be doing?
This is why we came here.
That's why we
try how we can solve it.
Give us some ideas.
Yes, this is why we came here.
Look, let's be honest. There's instability in your country, and there's been some political instability in this country. So how do we get past that and move forward? What are the 3 recommendations that you would give Israel to how to move forward with the normalization and peace with your country?
Okay, first, we need to push for economic relation.
Okay.
And humanitarian. And number three, and we talked about it, the political issue between Sudan and Israel. These are the three ways we can start it. But even this is not a solution. Solution is a different, because as you say, you are in Arab and Muslim country.
Yeah.
Don't forget this. It is not just, as I say in the beginning, it is not just economic relation. No, it is different. It is normalization. Means social to social, people to people. Or you want, like Camp David, until now nothing. Since 40 years, yes, there are diplomatic relation between Israel and Egypt, but on the ground there is no real normalization. We need to make real relation with the people with a different way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mom.
I hadn't thought about the angle that there was fighting, and that's the only Abraham Accord country that actually fought with Israel. And that's a very interesting angle that I don't think we are so aware of here, or we think about.
No, not fight really.
Proxy. No, I know we didn't really fight.
Different.
But there was...
They were present in Egypt.
Yes.
Exactly. No, but that's an interesting angle. Suzan, I met you, I had the privilege of meeting you a month ago. And I'd like to move completely back to our region and talk a little bit about Kurdistan, the Kurds. You know, there's a lot of people in this country who feel very emotionally connected to the Kurdish cause. I'm not sure you know that half of this city was built by Kurdish Jews. Most of our cuisine here is Kurdish cuisine, even though my Iraqi husband will say that it's Iraqi, but let's not get into that now. But Suzan, what is your perspective of the wider Middle East and the Kurds and their role and how we can help them and they can help the Abraham Accords?
First of all, I would like to say thank you to Dan and Dr. Yachel for inviting me. Though it's a daunting experience because I'm in a business of asking the question, not the other way around.
Oh, it's fun, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So I would like to approach this topic as a journalist, but also as someone who's Kurd and Iraqi. First of all, and I say it with all sincerity, Israel is the only country when they ask me where you're from, and I say I'm Kurd, they don't question. They don't say, what's Kurd? What do you mean by Kurd? And I like that. And I'm talking about, you know, from the average man in the street, the taxi driver, till...
Well, they're all Kurds, that's
they're
why.
all Kurd, yes. Till meeting Benny Gantz back in the summer, in June. And when I said to him, I'm Kurd, he also had something positive to share about, you know, the Kurds. So... before speaking about Kurd, I need to speak about Iraq because sadly,
please,
Kurdistan is not independent. And as you all know, last year in October, the Iraqi parliament, they approved a law against any Iraqi citizens or institute to have any ties with Israel. And you might think, hang on. But I will tell you that most Iraqi, they do not support this law. And I will tell you why. I was brought up as a child to have no aggression or hatred towards the Jews. And my family was not unique. I was brought up in diaspora with mom telling me stories about Iraqi Jews, how we all lived as Iraqis. I mean, not many people know, back in the 1930s, 40% of Baghdad was Jewish. Yeah. The Jewish community in Iraq is one of the oldest in the region. The Talmud, the Babylon Talmud was written in Iraq, in Old Mesopotamian. So I was brought up to have no aggression about Jews or Israel. And I always wanted to visit Israel. But I was scared because at the same time, when I grew up, I was a journalist. And I used to work for Qatari media. And Israel it's an apartheid. Israel is dangerous. If you go to Israel, it's horrible, it's awful. I didn't believe in that, but I didn't have the courage. I was scared. I was scared how the community will react. And I'm not talking about the Kurdish community, because the Kurdish community has absolutely nothing against Israel. We have been in peace for decades, but unofficially.
So, Suzan, what's going to happen in Iraq, in your view? What Is there any hope at all?
There is a hope, because when this law was approved, some Iraqi politician, and especially Muqtada al-Sadr, he went on Twitter and said, oh, what a great achievement. And he asked Iraqi to come out and celebrate. And surprise, surprise, few Iraqi went out. I mean, maximum, we're talking about hundreds of Iraqi. They went on the street and, they chanted. But the majority of the Iraqi, they didn't care about it. Iraqis have no issue with Israel. In fact, most Iraqi, if Iran wasn't involved in Iraqi affair, they would welcome to be part of the Abraham Accord. I'm a strong believer that it will happen, but it will happen only when Iran is out of the equation.
So again, what Dr. Neriah was saying, we go back to Iran as the main source of the problem. Let's move to Somalia now. Ambassador Bedel Mohamed. Somalia is a country that also has seen its share of instability, political instability. I have received personally many overtures from policymakers in Somalia about the wish to get closer to Israel. So there is the real desire there, from what I can see. What is the view from your perspective, especially as somebody who was in the UN for so long? How do you see this panning out?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. But let me first thank the president of the JCPA and the team for inviting us and according good hospitality while we're here. I'm also very thankful for the President of State of Israel, Isaac Herzog, for his speech of peace and harmony between the State of Israel and the countries who participate. I can assure you, Mr. President, your message of peace will be delivered in Somalia, and we will convey our President and the Prime Minister and the government of Somalia the wish of creating a close partnership between the State of Israel and Somalia at large. Coming back to Somalia and the State of Israel relationship and how we are now, I can assure you some sort of strategic relationship has started not only recently, but has existed in early 1953 when Somalia was looking for an independent. Our foreign minister at that time in 1953, Abdullah Isa, has met the foreign minister of state of Israel and has agreed that the two countries, when they become independent, they will form a formal recognized states. And by the time we became a state in 1960s, Israel foreign minister was invited by our president to come and play our celebration for being a newborn African state. And on, that relationship has existed. And I think there's a window of opportunity that we have some sort of a relations that has existed. And the State of Israel, formally or informally, has contributed and assisted Somalia on certain cases. Fast forward, after signing an Abraham Accord, I think there's a debate in our country, in Somalia, where will Somalia stand when peace agreement has been signed between the Arabs and the Israelis. Abraham Accord is maintaining and strengthening peace in the Middle East, but also the rest of the world, including Africa. And the conflict or lack of conflict in Middle East is by extension a conflict or instability in Horn of Africa. The two regions are interconnected. Somalia is a member of African countries, Arab League, and OIC is the founding member of African Union, founding member of Arab League, founding member of OIC, an important member state for the United Nations, who have existed for so long. So the debate has existed and has created a new window of opportunity where Somalia will stand if the Arabs and Islam, some countries, have signed an agreement. I can tell you all indications are very positive. Since Sudan, Morocco, United Emirates, Egypt before, Jordan before, has signed agreement, then there is no point why Somalia not have an agreement with the State of Israel. The question is when and how. That is where we are. The question is when and how.
Is your government ready for this, you think?
Well, let's put in the context. Somalia is a member of African countries. Africa is an important continent. All statistics are showing that there's an interest, given we are a multipolar system now. There's a huge interest in Africa, and particularly in Horn of Africa. In 2050, the population of Africa will be 2.2 billion, out of 7.2 billion. 1 in 4 population of world will be in Africa. 70% of that population are less than 30% in Africa. So Africa become an attractive to many countries, particularly in Horn of Africa. Our leadership, we have a new leadership. We have President Hassan Mohamed, who was re-elected, who appointed his close friend, his ally, his political partner, Hamza Abdel as the Prime Minister. In first time, we have a unified leadership in the country who can galvanize any agenda in the country, who can pass legislation in the Parliament and Senate. And I think, I'm sure 100% they already welcome the signing of our Abraham Accord. Any peace agreement in the Middle East is peace and prosperity in Somalia and Horn of Africa at large. And in that context, without hesitation, I'm sure that the President and the Prime Minister not only welcome the signing agreement of Abraham Accord, but also Somalia, to some degree, at the timing of his willing, he will join and sign an agreement with the State of Israel. I can tell you, I have statistically, in early 80s, when we have a Cold War, where Soviet Union and Cuba was engaged in the conflict, Somalia shifted to the West. And one of the countries it reached out, Mohamed is the State of Israel. They welcomed him, they assisted him, and they have a security partnership. While I was in New York, as an ambassador, we have all kinds of resolutions in UN General Assembly.
How do you guys vote?
We voted to some degree a vote of Arab League and OIC. But more important, I have a good relationship with the Embassy of Israel at the United Nations. And on the day that I needed most, Israel voted me. Voted me because Somalia has a candidate for International Court of Justice. It's very critical. It's the first time we have a vote in UN General Assembly where Somalia has a candidate for International Court of Justice. Israel, I can assure you 100% welcomed me and voted me my candidate after I lobbied. So we have that kind of interest, convergence of interest between Israel and Somalia. So in overall, and let me give you a very good example. I left Somalia 10 days ago because I have received an invitation on February 2nd, and I knew I was going to Jerusalem first time and discussing the issue of Israel and Africa relationship. In Kismayo, southern Somalia, Jubaland, before I traveled to Mogadishu, I called four people sitting with us. Informally, I asked them, how did you see guys Abraham Accord? They're businessmen. There's a religious leader who are well-respected sheikh. The well-respected sheikh, we signed an agreement with the State of Israel. The leader of sheikh said that. He's the leader of the mosque in Kismayo. I said, why? He said, we are Muslims. We have to promote peace, regardless of differences. So that is the kind of perception that exists in Somalia. So coming back to the leadership, I'm sure Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, the President of Somalia, and the Prime Minister Hamza, without hesitation, one time comes in, and there is a time they will somehow have formal or informal relations with the State of Israel.
Amen, inshallah, and we very much look forward to welcoming your government here in a day that we will be able to sign peace and normalization and move forward. So, in the Abraham Accord, the whole time that I was involved in creating the UAE Israel Business Council and the Gulf Israel Women's Forum, everybody always wanted to triangulate with the Abraham Accord. So you've all obviously got the American relationship because they were the brokers, they were the conveners. And we have the I2U2, which is the triangulation of the Gulf, Israel and India. But I really think that strategically, the African triangulation can take us to a whole new place and a very stable region and a much better world. So I thank all of our participants. Thank you so much for being in Jerusalem, and please do come back. It's been wonderful having you. Oh, questions. Okay. Anybody have any questions for our panelists? Yes, sir. Tell us who you are.
My name is
Liberian American. Welcome to Jerusalem.
So my question goes to the ambassador. Do you see Mr. Ambassador, do you see a disconnect between what African youth that is considered to be the future of Africa and those of you who are in political power in Africa? Do you see a disconnect between your perception of Israel between the youth and the political leaders in Africa? That's the first question. The second question is, do you think financial incentives drive the way African leaders, those of you who are in political power, do vote against Israel when it comes to international issues? And I'm saying this because I want to put it in a context. Gambia, the former president of Gambia, Yahya Jammeh, wanted some money from the Arab world. And so he decided that Gambia needed to be a part of the Arab League, even though Gambia is in West Africa. That's one. The second thing is, I have been advocating on several levels at the United Nations with many of you who are ambassadors. And few of the ambassadors will tell you they will vote simply because their principals, the presidents of their country, respective countries, will tell them, if you vote this way, we may not get resources from the Middle East. It happened in the case of Liberia, where a friend of mine, Louis Brown, was the Liberian ambassador at the United Nations. He had to escape from New York simply because he didn't want to take a vote. And the reason why he did that, because the president informed him that if we take either position, it has economic consequences. And there are few ambassadors at the United Nations who do vote based on financial incentives that those of you who are in political power may want to receive from the Middle East.
But by that rationale, the Abraham Accords would actually be a positive influence in the fact that the whole region is now, less belligerent and the countries are no longer in conflict. Or are we just talking about Iran again?
Well, because I travel a lot in Africa, I just came from there, several countries. I'm focused on creating jobs. And if you see the role that China is playing in Africa, that role is limited. If you see the role that the United States is playing in Africa, it is also limited. What Africa needs is what Israel offers: technology, innovation, private-public partnership. When it comes to the Abraham Accord...
So maybe let them answer the question about the financial incentives not to vote with Israel.
Let's put it clear, yes. One thing I agree with you is African leaders and African young generations are not the same page. There's a huge gap, and we need to reevaluate how our leaders think when it comes to our national interest in Africa. In terms of transactional politics, it exists everywhere. Money is a soft power. It makes influence, and it creates countries who need a development assistance to be influenced by the countries who have money and resources. In the context of general United Nations system, and I speak on behalf of, from the Somali perspective, it has never influenced. It has never influenced my voting on behalf of Somalia to be a transactional one. I can tell you, and I said it in publicly, that when I needed vote in the UN General Assembly, all countries come. But let's look in terms of the Security Council. Africa is always have an agreed method of candidates. So we select our candidates without competition, and we nominate for the regional rotation when it comes to who will be member of the UN Security Council. Not in the Western countries. There's always competition within Western countries who will be member of the UN Security Council. And when it comes to issue of the Israel and Palestinian issue in the UN General Assembly, all kind of rotational issues has existed. There's some countries who might tempted to have a development aid from Gulf countries, and in that context vote in preference of the Palestinians against the Israel. That has existed. But when it comes to Somalia, it has never existed. We were a member of the Arab League, founding member of Arab League. We are a founding member of African Union, by the way. We are a founding member of OIC. So our strategic interest always comes first when we vote in UN General Assembly or any other forums. How that voting pattern reflects in the vote of the Israeli issues is one issue. There's one thing that I have learned in the UN system. Whenever there's a resolution in UN General Assembly about the issue of the Palestinians and Israelis, always there's a lot of campaign and trying to win the votes. The Israeli reach out to certain countries, particularly in the West, some Arab countries, some African countries that they have relations, and seek in favor of their positions. So does the Palestinians and others. In that context, it's not a transactional one, I can tell you. What was transactional to some degree, and issues are much more higher stake. If you look in the case of Iraq war, if you go back to the UN Security Council, where when Americans were preparing to go to war in Iraq, and Secretary of State went to the UN Security Council and was seeking a vote to authorize. At that time, it became a very serious issue. Certain countries have interested and voted in favor of the US, and America went to war in Iraq at that time. I remember, to some degree, a country from Africa who are a member of the UN Security Council voted the vote of the war of in Iraq, and later become, by the way, that ambassador later became UN Special Envoy on Somalia. He was appointed as a UN Special Envoy on Somalia. So in African countries, yes, to some degree, money and resources influence their own voting system.
Ambassador, let's hear from our second ambassador.
I think the most important thing, look at it from a bigger picture. Africa is, if you look at its map, is an island with very important four coasts. The East Coast, where we come from, the Southern Coast, the Western Coast, and the Northern Coast. All these from geopolitical perspective. If you look at it from current stage of underdevelopment we are in a sorry situation. But as he said, beyond 250, 270, our population will become very important population. And therefore, the kind of politics we are using now may not necessarily be the same. And that's why we are saying, if the Middle East is trying to redraw, what somebody actually said, renewal of the Middle East. Realignment. If it is going that trend, it is our obligation, for the sake of our generation, our continent being very young, that our decision must be informed differently from the perspective we are saying. So it is a good advice, let me put it this way, that there is something bigger than that, that we will become the eye of the world. Any country that is important should take us very serious, because the forecasts I said make us very strategic compared to other countries that are either too old and too tired, but they want to retire, and they have to retire somewhere.
Dr. Belete, you had an insight about this.
Yeah, let us, I think, steer the waters a little bit deeper. I just returned from a task force meeting where the majority of IGAD states were represented, and Israel was mentioned. There was this kind of nervousness among representatives.
Where?
Shall I mention?
The African Union Conference?
No, and IGAD conference. Right. And representatives from Somalia were also there. Yes, everyone admits the importance of Israel to the Horn of Africa, to Africa in general. But how we are going to handle Israel is a little bit difficult at the moment, because every member state in Africa, in the Horn of Africa, is undergoing a difficult period at the moment. And there are far greater transactional actors invested in the process. So what Israel offers as an alternative to Horn countries, to Red Sea countries, to Gulf of Aden countries, is not that much visible compared to others from the Middle East, others from the West. So how we are going to manage the Israeli Horn of Africa relationship requires a deeper assessment. So, I mean, when Sudan joined the Abraham's Accord, it is not in the best of its shape. There is this transition going on. Somehow it was imposed on the Sudan. Somehow the US administration, particularly the Trump administration, imposed on the Sudan as an ultimatum to join the Abraham Accords. What a strong Sudan would decide later on remains a question.
Well, let's pray that they decide.
So the
again.
Somalis as well might join the Abraham Accord. That is why I said earlier, for the Horn of Africa countries, including Ethiopia, the Abraham Accord or not, Israel remains important. But it is how we manage that relationship in ways to shape the peace and security architecture, on ways to make it more beyond the transactional relationship is in the interest of both Israel and the home state.
Thank you so much for such an honest answer. Any other questions? Yes, over there. Sir, who are you and where do you come from? We can hear you. The microphone.
Thank you so much. I am actually from Somaliland, not Somalia. We are actually independent country from Somalia. We say we are the only democracy in the Horn of Africa, only democracy country. And we are the most peaceful country in the Horn of Africa. We have separated from Somalia for almost 30 years ago. And we have got more discipline in terms of democracy, stability in the Horn of Africa. We actually, I'm not in the panel, unfortunately, I should have been in the panel, because we are struggling for recognition for over 30 years from Somalia. The ambassador forget that we were the only country, the first country that created Somalia in 1960, and he forget that it was actually Israel which recognized Somaliland at that time in 1960. And at that time there was two countries. One was in Libya and the other one was Somalia. The Israeli voted for Somalia to become a member of the United Nations in 1960. So actually, and we have got problem with Somalia. Somalia is actually suffering a lot of Islamist and militant groups, Al-Shabaab, and they are suffering dysfunctional government because there is a member of federal states like the ambassador mentioned from Jubaland, Puntland, and Galmudug, and southwestern Somalia. So they have got a mechanism which will not be able to work, and they are also dragging us that problem to them. So I think the President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud and
are you going to be part of the Abraham Accords?
We will be first, actually, before them.
Only in Jerusalem are we going to solve
the Abraham Accord.
I suggest that we have a peace conference for the African nations in Jerusalem. Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We will definitely sign the Abraham Accord faster
Amen.
than Somalia. Thank you.
We'll be happy to broker that peace, by the way. Ambassador, 2 words, we need to finish.
Well, I just want to thank my brother from Somaliland. Actually, I haven't forgot anything. The reality is Somalia is sovereign, independent, recognized, one state, where even if Israel recognizes any country in our region, it will be the sovereign state of Somalia. It's not going to be any other.
Well, let's work towards everybody recognizing everybody.
But we wish them, our point, we wish him all the best.
Amen.
Somalia is recovering, is doing very well. And I can tell you 100% in the next 5-10 years, it will be one of the most stable, not only stable, but one of the most prosperous countries in our region.
Well,
our region has the best time in our history.
Well, we look forward.
We have a new leadership in Somalia. We have a new leadership in Ethiopia. We have a new leadership in Kenya. We used to be a rival. We're no longer rival. We are ally and friend and working one another. Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya, Djibouti, Sudan, South Sudan. Our region, Horn of Africa, has the best time in history, and peace and stability will be coming very soon as a last.
Well, we hope Jerusalem, the city of peace, can help in any way that we can to make a better region, a better world, a more cohesive world. Thank you all very much.